Welcome, everybody. This is Jason, and the name of this week's workshop is Skin to Win Part 4. This workshop is the last of a now 4-part series. This one is just a catch-all for all of the topics that I haven't covered in previous workshops. So let's have a look. What do we still have to cover? This workshop touches on some of the finer points that I haven't covered yet. Color actions, which is applying a pre-made set of instructions to your textures, skin blending, and the magic of Sims 2 genetics. Skin blending, what's that? Skin blending is a technique for blending one skin texture into another. This can be done to reduce pixelation, to transfer details from one skin to another skin. There are many reasons why you would want to do that, and there are a few basic techniques for doing that. Color actions. So a color action is simply you open a texture, you play an automated set of instructions on it, and it changes the texture's color. So in the example here, we're starting with YSIM's miscellaneous skin blend 16, and we apply trapping sun-kissed action to it. And yeah, it looks like, you've been out in the sun a bit, you've got a nice tan going on. If we're going to apply the action to a single texture, it's really easy. In Photoshop, we make sure that we have our action loaded up. We go to our Actions tab and we find what we're looking for, in this case, sun-kissed, and we just click on the play button and Photoshop does the rest of the work. If we want to do this for a whole bunch of textures, however, if we have a whole set of skin tones, a whole set of skin textures that we need to recolor, there's a faster way. We select File, Automate Batch. Then we select the group, the action group in the top drop down here, and the specific action in the bottom drop down, and then we click OK. And it's going to apply this same action to everything that's open. And then we would save it as you normally do. Skin blending. So what exactly is skin blending? So in this example, I have I believe that's YSIM 16, and then the new version that I'm working on, I was working on a set of Delvian skin tones. So I found this really old thing from Mod The Sims, and I tried to color match it as close as I could to about Max's skin tone 2. And so say we want to marry these two textures, say we want to blend this into the YSIM 16 skin base, just so that we have this funky kind of face makeup. So we open both files in Photoshop, we copy the top layer, which in this case is the Delvian skin tone. We paste that over layer 1, or the base layer, which is YSIM 16. We add a layer mask to the top layer. So we just click that little mask icon there, and then we Control-I to switch it entirely to black. Now all you're going to see is the bottom layer, because the top layer has been completely masked out, but not to worry. We go to our brush tool, we make sure that our hardness is set to 0, and then we select a fairly wide brush because we're just going to be kind of feathering in this texture. And then what we do is just paint the layer mask in the places where we want to feather in the texture. So we're just kind of gradually blending in this Delvian texture to the YSIM face, kind of like this. When we're happy with that, we can go ahead and save it. Another technique is changing the opacity or fill of your top layer, so that instead of like this intense blending effect directly from the top layer into the bottom layer, it's not the most perfect blend. You can reduce the fill or reduce the opacity, and that will kind of change it up a bit. That will make it more of a subtle effect, but it's kind of a creative process. You have to play with it until you get it right. Finally, the topic of genetics. The Sims 2 handles genetics a lot differently than other resources, and skin genetics are their own topic. Hair genetics and eye genetics work completely differently. I provided a link to an old LiveJournal article about the topic in the resource post. For further information on hair and eye genetics, you might want to check that out. But back to skins. The skins have a specialized X resource or text editable resource called the XSTN. This resource has one property, genetic, that controls the heritability value of a skin. By default, skins right out of Body Shop are custom, so they have a genetic value of 0. What does that mean? That means that a child of this parent sim is 50% likely to inherit that skin. So if you have two sims with custom skins, the child is 50% likely to inherit that. And also, townies can apply this skin, and also it's not affected by the genetic values of other skins. The genetic property is a spectrum. So what that means, the child is able to inherit a skin anywhere in the genetic range of the two parents' skins. As an example, you have two parents. First parent is using YSIM 6 that has a genetic value of 12, and second parent is using YSIM 39 that has a genetic value of 34. So the child sim can inherit any skins within that range. So anywhere between 12 and 34, they can inherit those skin tones. Another example, one parent has YSIM 15, which is really pale. It has a genetic value of 0.15. And the other parent is really dark, has a genetic value of, YSIM 14 has a genetic value of 0.95. So that child can inherit anything within this range between 15 and 0.15 and 0.95. This is really helpful if you use a lot of supernatural or non-human skins. You can put the genetic value way out of the human range. For example, in my designer genes, I have a whole set of orc skins, and I think I have those in the 3 range, so between 3.15 and 3.8 something. That means that 2 orc parents could not create a human child. So in SimPE, if you're going to edit genetics, you just go to the XSTN in the resource tree, once again in the resource list. You select the genetic property in the plugin, and you just edit it to whatever value you want. You commit, you save, and you're done. With Outfit Organizer, it's a little bit different. You need to set yourself up to succeed first. So you open Outfit Organizer, make sure your genetics is set to skins. Then you can open skins, like a whole folder full of skins, and manually change the genetic values for each. Or you can batch edit. This is the advantage of Outfit Organizer. You can edit the genetic values of an entire folder of skins at a time. You just grab one, change the genetics, hit enter, and move on to the next one. Or if you want to edit multiple skins to the same genetic value, you shift select from the list in the lower pane, enter the genetic value, hit enter, and it will update them for all of the skins. If you're following along at home, I've left some textures to work with, and we will put it into practice. We will start on these 2 techniques. So we go to Skin to Win 4, and let's start with skin blending. Let me grab these 2 textures. And I don't have the whole set of skins because this was, at the time I was putting together the materials for the workshop, I didn't have this quite ready yet. So let's take this Delvian skin. We just marquee tool and select it all. Then we Control C. Then we just paste it right on top of the background. Our background, I believe this is YSIM 16, but don't recall exactly. Anyway, they're fairly similar in tone. So one thing that we can do, we add a layer mask. And then, okay, so we've added a layer mask. Let's just go Control I, and that fills it in with black. And oh no, where did my top layer go? Let's select the brush tool. I'm going to scoot up the size of this brush to about 60. And I make sure that my hardness is 0. And now it's just, we need to make sure that we're painting. The mask is currently black, so we need to make sure that we're painting with the white color. And that's a little bit too wide. I'm going to take that down to about 50. And then we just paint white onto the layer mask. We can just kind of feather that Delvian forehead texture in. So I don't want to go all the way out. Say I just want like kind of a forehead ornament. Just kind of lightly feather that in. Just try to get all of the eyebrow ridge, but nothing below that. And let's see. Let's try to get some of that cheek makeup. We can mess with it. And then another way to really to make it a little bit more subtle, we go up to the fill in the layer here. So we just reduce that fill to, let's say, about 50. About 50% fill, and you get this, you get more of a subtle blending in, or you can go lower. You can go, that's about 20%. That's really subtle. So there are a lot of different techniques for blending skins. Another example where this is useful. If we go back to the project folder from the previous week, let's try YSim 36. So we open this face texture. And if we remember, it was a little bit crunchy around the forehead. So what we can do here, we just duplicate our layer. And now I'm going to go blur. On the top layer, we use a Gaussian blur. And that's a lot. So let's take it down to about 4.5. So we just blur the top layer. Then, as before, we can add a layer mask. We Control I to blend it completely out. And then, as before, we just feather in this crunchy part. So we're just subtly smoothing it only on the crunchy part, so that it reduces a lot of that crunchiness, that pixelation back there. And we can do the same thing down here. Kind of get the, just feather in that blur so that we get rid of that pixelation. And that looks a little bit better, honestly. And that is skin blending. Before I dive really deep into color actions in the resource post, there's this really cool master list on Garden of Shadows of all of the color actions. And I'm really sorry, Garden of Shadows is kind of, it's been in and out for the last couple of days. But if you go to this link, there are a lot of amazing, this is basically a who's who of color actions. We've got Simagroup, we've got all of Pooklet's actions, we've got Io, Digi, Alfred Askew, Furbyq, some Amalia. I use that occasionally. all of trappings actions. And what do we have down here? Oh, these are like actions for clothing. I really like Alfred Askews, any color you like. Try to find it. Or no, sorry, Curious Bees, any color you like, and Yeti Love Song. Those are cool for like just recoloring objects and clothing and stuff. But anyway, grab that link and check out some of those actions. Color actions. So now I have a full set of color actions. This is YSIM 31. And I've included a swatch because then it will be really easy to make the skin. So we have opened all of these in Photoshop. And we can see we've got this whole group of actions here. Let's say I like this skin tone, but I want it to be darker. So I can take the individual texture, find sunset here and play. And that will get me there. But if you have multiple textures open, it's much faster to do this. Automate, batch. Now we've got the group here, the group of actions that it's included in, and we've got the specific action. So we've already got trapping sunset set up. We just click OK and vámonos. And what I'm doing here, I'm just Control S, Control W on each one of these. I'm just quickly saving these textures. And let's go back and check those face textures because we added a darker color here. Yeah, see, the pixelation is not too bad. We don't really need to blend this out, but we could use that skin blending technique if these pixelated. And let's do, because I'm really picky, I don't want the teeth to be discolored. So let's just grab the original teeth texture. Save that as a PNG. And we can close that now and do the same thing for Elder. Okay, so skin blending and color actions. Let's go with something that's linked to Rio and SBB, and I'm just going to call this test skin. Test skin. We just import it back into the game, and that's it on Buddy Shop. Now we open SimPE. We go to Save Sims. We find our test skin. And just as we did in last week's workshop, we're going to, well, first we need to notate which of the heavy textures is which of the larger textures is which. And I just happen to have this notepad handy. So we AF body cut, AF body normal. Yeah, body fat doesn't super matter. I just need the last 4 characters so that I know what goes where. Doesn't have to be perfect. And we need child. Okay, so now I've got a good idea what goes where. Let's start with the swatch. So we select the swatch in the resource tree, then in the resource list. We right click, we replace. And I need to go to my desktop and skin to win 4. Just replace our swatch. Then we go to the TXTR in the resource tree. We need to replace all of these. This one is 70. Okay, that's AF normal. So we find AF normal. And we can commit. And that is 81D5 is AM fat. Change it to DXT3 and build. And that is 75F1 is child. That's a little bit crunchy. That's the scalp, obviously. That is 64B9 is AM fit. And then that's toddler. A 687, that's AM normal. That's elder face. You can tell by the wrinkles. And that's regular face. And that is AF fat. Uh, 714, that is AF fit. And that's baby. And we're following this technique to reduce pixelation. So we just build the skin out as we did last week, and now we can test it in game. Before we test that out in game, we go to XSTN. We can see here it has a genetic value of 0. That is fairly dark. So ideally, we want it to have a genetic value of around 0.75, maybe 0.8. And one way that we can do that, we select the XSTN in the resource tree, once again in the resource list, and we edit the genetic here in the plugin. But let's say that I don't want to do that. Let's say I have a better way to do it than SimPE. So we close out SimPE, we pop open Outfit Organizer. And I honestly recommend this way. It's a lot better. So we pull open Outfit Organizer. And let's select our saved Sims folder. And let's ignore all of these newly created things. First, we want to make sure that we're set to edit skins. So we go genetics, skins. And then I want to find test skin. So we've got test skin here. So we can see that the genetic value is set to custom. The way that we would change this, we just go into the multi-box here. We enter 0.75 or 0.8 or whatever we want. 0.8. And then we just save all, and we're ready to go. Okay, so now this is an example of how genetics works. So we have two Sims. We have Ellie, who's using YSim 34, and Eric, who's using YSim 29. Make a child. And you can see, let's just re-roll this. So the child sim can have any skins within that genetic range. Man, they make ugly babies. Yeah. Well, I think that's as good as it gets. So what skin did she pick up, just out of curiosity? So she picked up YSim 7. That's somewhere in between YSim 29 and YSim 34. So she can pick up any skin within that range. Okay, so we have our test sims, and we've applied the new skin tone to it. So as a final test, we can see that our skins are working. So that looks pretty good. And that is the final part of this workshop.